We are live now.
Live now.
Are you all ready? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CSE's live chat. I am Sukanya Nair, and today we are going to discuss a topic that affects each and every one of us, and that is India's air pollution crisis. So, in 1996, CSE had released a report called as Slow Murder. That report shook the nation. That basically changed the way we looked at air pollution, and it also revealed that how our daily commute is slowly poisoning us. And if we fast forward it to today, it's not like the smog has completely, I mean, smog may not be black anymore, but that doesn't mean that the toxicity has gone anywhere. So to unpack the journey from for the last 3 decades, we have three incredible voices who have researched, reported, and spearheaded the clean air movement in India. So welcome, guys. We have Anumita Roychowdhury. She heads the clean air program at CSE. Richard Mahapatra, who is Down to Earth's managing editor and a senior director with Down to Earth and CSE, and Vivek Mishra. He's a senior reporter with Down to Earth. Thank you so much for joining. And before we get into the conversation, Richard, I think because you've been tracking it for the last 3 decades, I'm just going to hand it over to you completely, and I hope you can steer the conversation from here.
Sure. Thank you, Sukanya. But as Sukanya just said, we are speaking from Delhi. I think it feels like we are not breathing air, rather particulate matters. Whether it's 2.5, 1, or 10, it feels like technically you cannot see air, but in Delhi you can actually see air with a color and dense with particulate matters. And if you, I think, just throw the data also, it seems like you have mentioned that 30 years since that first book, rather the research came out, the slow murder, the deadly story of vehicular pollution in India. During 2009 and 19, that in 10 years, 3.8 million deaths have been attributed to air pollution in India. And if you put it in another way, also the whole of the entire population of India lives in places above the WHO standard of PM 2.5. And nobody is safe. So in this context, so that's how when we are speaking, it's happening now. Anumita, I'll come to you. In this context, like now I'm taking you back. In 1996, the book came. You're very much part of it. Why the research happened and you called it slow murder?
I'm so glad, Richard, that we are having this conversation today. I mean, now this year, the 30th year begins of the 30th anniversary of our Right to Clean Air campaign. And it all started in 95, 96. And why? Why did it start? I still recall when Anil Agarwal, who started it all, he called a couple of us into to his room and he said, "What is this going on in this city? Why all the car owners have been asked to queue up to get the tailpipe of the vehicles tested? They call it pollution under control. What is this all about? Go and find out." And that's how the journey began. And what that preliminary investigation, which was meant to be only an article in Down to Earth, that actually became a book, Slow Murder. Therefore, what is very fascinating about that journey, that point of time, is that it was a blend of curiosity because we knew nothing about what the problem was. That's how it started, with a blank sheet of paper. But when the investigation continued and we began to understand what was happening, what are we breathing, the reasons, and especially vehicular pollution, because at that point of time, because of the Supreme Court directive, the polluting industries were thrown out of the city. So therefore, the vehicles that emerged as one of the primary contributor, and we had to investigate that why our vehicles contribute so much. And that's when we discovered that old dinosaur carburetor technology in our Fiat and Ambassador and the two-stroke engines powering our two-wheelers, and the very old archaic technology of the trucks and the buses. they're all contributing to the problem, and because they were also using the extremely filthy fuel. Imagine today we use diesel with 10 parts per million sulfur, and it was 5,000 then, and with no pollution control, with no emission standards. So we said, therefore, who's responsible? The automobile industry, the petroleum industry, and the government, who's not regulating anything at that. We were at the Bharat stage zero level. And of course, the complete mismanagement of traffic, explosive increase in vehicle numbers that was already started, and absolutely lack of public transport and alternative mobility. So that's said, this inaction and the cost of pollution and the health cost of pollution, that amounts to nothing less than slow murder.
So basically, just to it's to say that the title itself, slow murder, was basically the health implications of air pollution. And that was probably the first time that not only you talked about air pollutions, the emerging crisis. Yes, in Delhi you spoke about that, but its implication in health. So, how did you see the health impact at that point of time also?
So imagine we are looking the black emissions, fill the air, what we are breathing, but you are trying to now build opinion, public opinion, build awareness, make a connection with the people when you had no data. You cannot even imagine what it meant then to build a campaign with absolutely no data. You just mentioned the different size fraction of particulate matter, 10, 2.51, so advanced and sophisticated today. But at that point of time, we were only monitoring total suspended particulate matter, which is essentially all the dust in the air, right? And no health data, no health study in our hands. Therefore, we had to rely so much on the clinical experience of the doctors. And that is an amazing role that the medical community played, even not everyone, just few progressive ones at that point of time. When for the first time in 1998, we got the pictures of the lungs. I remember Dr. Naresh Trehan, who had given those
Yeah.
pictures to us, and he gave us two pictures. One is the pink lung of a person living in Himachal Pradesh, and another, the person from Delhi, the black lung, right? And somebody said that this really looks like a person, a laborer working in a coal mine, that it all virtually amounted to living in Delhi. So, and those lung pictures, little bit of evidence, but that's, Richard, what is fascinating about that experience is that when you bring data, knowledge, information out in the public domain, the change makers, so that point of time, Supreme Court, who was that already hearing the public interest litigation, I mean, that kind of catalyzed, it caught the imagination of people, the media responded, Supreme Court responded, and that kind of catalyzed the first generation reforms in the city. I think that's the most remarkable. And for the next 10 years of that first generation action, it was a very strategic drive to fight the most polluting fuels in the city, diesel in transport and coal, petcoke, furnace oil in industry.
Okay, I'll come back to this. But as you mentioned, that at that point of time, you only depended on practitioners' experiences and the kind of patients they observed. विवेक, I'll come to you. विवेक, आपने ये 5 साल में बहुत सारे स्टेट्स में घुमा. ये आपका असाइनमेंट था कि आपका एयर पोल्यूशन का इम्पैक्ट देखने के लिए, रिसर्च करने के लिए, रिपोर्ट करने के लिए आपने वही जगह गया जहां ये दिखाई देता है. मोस्टली बहुत सारे हॉस्पिटल के आउटडोर्स, चिल्ड्रन हॉस्पिटल आपने काफी विजिट किया. तो एयर पोल्यूशन कैसे अनफोल्ड करता है एक ओपीडी में, एक हॉस्पिटल में, और आपने क्या देखा? तो पर्टिकुलरली द नॉर्दर्न इंडिया स्टेट्स आपने काफी रिपोर्ट किया है जी.
तो सबसे पहले तो मैम ने कहा जैसे कि जो एयर पोल्यूशन का हेल्थ से नाता है वो साफ साफ 2 दशक पहले नहीं दिखता था, लेकिन अब बहुत सारे रिसर्च पेपर ऐसे हैं और डेटा है जो ये एस्टेब्लिश करता है कि एयर पोल्यूशन लिंक्ड डिजीजेस जो हैं वो प्रिवेल हैं, फैल गई हैं. तो जब हमने ग्लोबल बर्डन डिजीज का डेटा देखा डाउन टू अर्थ में आपके साथ सबने, तो हमने देखा कि वहाँ ग्लोबल बर्डन डिजीज हमें साफ साफ बता रहा है कि जो सबसे ज्यादा वल्नरेबल ग्रुप है वो है 0 से लेके 5 साल तक के बच्चे। और वो जो बच्चे हैं उनमें लोअर रेस्पिरेटरी इन्फेक्शन जो है LRI, जो कि लिंक्ड है एयर पोल्यूशन से, एस्टेब्लिश्ड, वो उसके कारण उनकी डेथ्स बहुत हो रही है। तो हमने देखा कि हमने 90 से लेकर 2017 तक के ग्लोबल बर्डन डिजीज डेटा को खंगालना शुरू किया और बहुत बारीक अध्ययन करके एयर पोल्यूशन टीम के साथ ये जाना कि देश में सबसे जो खतरनाक स्थितियां हैं वो कहाँ हैं। तो हमें राजस्थान एक सबसे पहले स्टेट दिखा जहां पर ये डेटा सजेस्ट हो रहा था कि 1 लाख में जो एनुअल 126.04 डेथ रेट है ड्यू टू LRI, ड्यू टू एयर लिंक,
और ये देश की
सबसे ज्यादा डेटा
among
कवर
states।
जी। तो हमने फिर राजस्थान पहुंचे हम, और राजस्थान में जो बच्चों का सबसे बड़ा हॉस्पिटल है, आई थिंक आसपास दिल्ली NCR, उसमें सबसे ज्यादा भर्तियां हुई हैं बच्चों की पिछले 4-5 सालों में एयर पोल्यूशन के कारण और बीमारियों, श्वसन संबंधी बीमारियों के कारण। तो जब हम लोग वहां पहुंचे तो हमने देखा कि बच्चों की बहुत बड़ी तादाद वहां पर लोअर रेस्पिरेटरी इन्फेक्शन से जूझ रही थी। तो हमें एक ऐसे केस स्टडी की तलाश थी जो हमें प्रॉपर बता सके कि वो एयर पोल्यूशन से लिंक्ड है या नहीं है। तो आमतौर पे जो हमारे नॉर्थ इंडिया या और अस्पताल हैं अभी जो बच्चों पे काम करते हैं, जैसे हमने दिल्ली के चाचा नेहरू अस्पताल में देखा, उत्तर प्रदेश में और जो बच्चों के अस्पताल हैं उनमें गए, बिहार में एम्स ने कुछ इस तरह के दाखिले लेने शुरू किए थे। वहाँ हमने जब जाके देखना शुरू किया तो हमें पता चला कि चूंकि इतनी ज़्यादा भीड़ है कि जो बच्चे आते हैं उनका जो फाइनेंशियल बैकग्राउंड है, उनका जो एनवायरमेंटल बैकग्राउंड है, वो सब नोट नहीं होता है और डायरेक्ट डिजीज डायग्नोस होती है और वो उस पे काम करना शुरू करते हैं। तो एक बच्चा मिला हमें जो कि 3 साल का था, यानी वो अपनी जिंदगी के 1000 दिन जीत चुका था। और जब वो 10 दिन का था तब उसे अपर रेस्पिरेटरी इन्फेक्शन का पता चला, और वो एक जयपुर के बहुत सघन इलाके में रहता था। तो ये काम अब डाउन टू अर्थ का बन गया था कि हम पता करें कि वो जो बच्चा है जो लोअर रेस्पिरेटरी इन्फेक्शन से जूझ रहा है, उसके आसपास किस तरह से एनवायरमेंटल माहौल है, उसका फाइनेंशियल बैकग्राउंड क्या है। तो हमने 3 चीज वहां नोटिस की जो कि हमने अपनी कवर स्टोरी में बताया कि मोहम्मद अनस नाम के 3 साल के बच्चे का जो बैकग्राउंड है, फाइनेंशियल बैकग्राउंड, वो बहुत कमजोर था, मजदूर लेबर फैमिली से, और वो एक बहुत कंजेस्टेड इलाके में रहते थे जहां बहुत ज्यादा वेहिकुलर पोल्यूशन था। और वहां के जो मॉनिटरिंग स्टेशन थे नजदीकी, जो एयर पोल्यूशन मॉनिटर कर रहे थे, वो हमें डेटा बता रहे थे कि उस इलाके में काफी ज्यादा पार्टिकुलेट मैटर 2.5 और 10 की कंसंट्रेशन है। तो वो सजेस्ट कर रहा था क्लियरली कि यहाँ रहने वाले बच्चों में कुछ दिक्कतें होंगी। तो वहाँ हमें एक आइडिया लगा कि वो जो जयपुर का मोहल्ला था, वहाँ पर काफी परेशानियां थी बच्चों में, खासतौर से सर्दी, खांसी, निमोनिया, ब्रोंकाइटिस, इस तरह की परेशानियों से वहाँ बच्चे जूझ रहे थे। फिर हमने उस बच्चे की मेडिकल हिस्ट्री लेकर जयपुर के जेके लोन हॉस्पिटल में वहाँ के डॉक्टर थे, उनसे हमने, डॉक्टर तेजपाल, उनके पास गए और उनसे ये जानने की कोशिश की कि क्या इसका कोई रिलेशन एयर पोल्यूशन से है। तो उन्होंने भी ये एक्सेप्ट किया कि ये बच्चा जब 10 दिन का था और तब से अब तक ये लगभग जाड़े में हर वीक पहुंचता है हॉस्पिटल, और उसकी एक अच्छी मेडिकल हिस्ट्री थी। उन्होंने हमसे उनके जो एक्सरे रिपोर्ट्स थी जिसमें लंग में पैचेस थे वो साफ साफ दिख रहे थे, वो हमें शेयर किया हमने, डाउन टू अर्थ में उसको छापा भी। तो वहाँ एक क्लियर केस मिला हमें 3 साल के बच्चे का जो कि एयर पोल्यूशन लिंक डिजीज से जूझ रहा था। खासतौर से पहले उसे अपर रेस्पिरेटरी प्रॉब्लम थी, देन बाद में लोअर रेस्पिरेटरी प्रॉब्लम हो गई, जो कि ये बात दर्शाता है कि जितने फाइनर पार्टिकुलेट मैटर होंगे वो हमारे बॉडी के पेनिट्रेशन उतना ज्यादा होगा। यानी पहले जब वो 3 साल पहले जिस तरीके से जूझ रहा था, तो वो कुछ ऐसे PM कणों से जूझ रहा था जो अपर रेस्पिरेटरी का कारण थे और बाद में लोअर। तो ये एक हमें वहाँ क्लियर केस हिस्ट्री मिली। फिर हमने जयपुर के ही आसपास के इलाकों में टहलना शुरू किया, जैसे दौसा, सीकर, इन सब इलाकों में जब हम गए तो वहाँ हमें 2 चीजें पता चली। एक कि चूल्हा बहुत ही बहुत ज़्यादा वहाँ इस्तेमाल होता है, और इंडोर और आउटडोर पोल्यूशन लगभग बराबर था वहाँ, क्योंकि चूल्हे पे बहुत ज़्यादा महिलाएं काम कर रही थी, तो उनके बच्चे चूल्हों के आसपास रहते हैं सुबह खेलते वक्त। और जैसा साइंटिफिकली कहा भी जाता है कि बच्चे छोटी हाइट के होते हैं तो और ज़्यादा श्वसन करते हैं, तो इस वजह से वो हमसे ज़्यादा सांसें भर रहे होते हैं। तो वो ज़्यादा पोल्यूशन ग्रैस्प कर रहे थे और वो दिख रहा था वहाँ पर। जी, तो इस तरह से हमें एक वहाँ केस स्टडी मिली, और जो कि मेडिकल उसमें रिकॉर्ड में भी वो दिखाता था, दर्शाता था कि वो एक क्लियर केस है। क्योंकि इससे पहले हम जब कवर स्टोरी के लिए काम कर रहे थे, तो तमाम जगह ये बात साफ-साफ आ रही थी, जैसे पार्लियामेंट से बहुत जो जवाब आते हैं, वहाँ डिनायल हो रहा था कि इसकी डेथ्स नहीं होती हैं एयर पॉल्यूशन की। और जब हम लोग खुद हमने पॉलिटिशियंस से बातें की, उन्होंने भी उसके डिनाई किया कि ऐसी कोई रिपोर्ट नहीं है। लेकिन ग्लोबल बर्डन डिजीज़ रिपोर्ट हमें साफ-साफ बताता है कि हर 3 मिनट में एक बच्चे की मौत हो रही है। और जब हमने कारण तलाशने की कोशिश की कि 90 से लेके 2017 तक किस कारण से बच्चों की मौत हो रही है, तो हमें जो सबसे बड़ा फिगर मिला, जब 1990 में करीब 8.9 लाख के आसपास बच्चे जो है, वो 27 दिन तक के बच्चे जिनको नियोनेटल कैटेगरी में रखा जाता है, वो बच्चे गर्भ की परेशानियों के कारण मर जाते हैं। लेकिन 27 दिन के बाद, यानी 28 दिन से लेके 5 साल तक के जो बच्चों का एज ग्रुप था, उनमें सबसे प्रिवेलिंग कारण, सबसे बड़ा जो कारण था, वो एयर पोल्यूशन लिंक्ड एलआरआई था, यानी लोअर
ये
रेस्पिरेटरी।
इम्पोर्टेंट चीज जो आपने ऑलमोस्ट 5-6 स्टेट्स में देखा,
जी, जी।
ओपीडी में देखा और ये किया. आई विल कम टू यू, अनुमिता. Now you have another book. You can say that it's a sequel of the slow murder, and you call it Slow Murder Continues. And listening to Vivek and looking at the impacts now, despite the denials that fatalities are not linked, but it seems so that it's also a intergenerational equity issue now.
Absolutely.
So how do you, after 30 years, where do you see this air pollution crisis in India now? Is it still Delhi, Mumbai, or metropolitan cities, or how it has evolved, and why?
So while it is true, Richard, that the beginning was Delhi, and Delhi has always remained the poster boy of air pollution. But at that point of time, we also had very limited knowledge. So we were angry about the air quality in Delhi. That's it. And we reacted and we channelized that anger to push for change. But at that point of time, we were not even monitoring in most part of India. We had no idea what were the pollution levels were like. But it's very interesting that since then, if I really look at the way the whole idea and the understanding of air pollution has actually evolved, first of all, we have really busted the myth that it is a Delhi centric problem. And it is now so clear from the data that is emerging all the time that it is a national crisis. But yes, what happens is that because of the Indo-Gangetic Plain, which is a landlocked area with very inefficient natural ventilation and where air gets trapped and therefore the pollution, and always has very high level of pollution. So somehow people have that understanding that maybe if I'm in the west coast, east coast, or south coast, I am going to be much, much safer. But that's another myth that we need to bust now because often we hear people want to run away from Delhi. Where will you run? There is no escape. Health science is telling us that most of the deaths and illness occur at a level between 25 to 70 microgram per cubic meter. Delhi is higher than that, but most of India is in that region. So maximum deaths and illness happen in that range. And after that, when the pollution still increase the way it does in Delhi, the relationship is not linear. So it kind of plateaus. So if maximum deaths are happening in that range where the most of India is, so you can imagine that is certainly a big national crisis. The number that is talking about, that 2.1 million deaths a year, is not just Delhi and few cities of NCR. It's entire country.
So I have a clarification. Like it's almost a pan-India problem.
Yes.
As in the beginning, also we said that everywhere you go, basically all Indians live
Yes.
in areas above the WHO standard of air pollution things. Now you mentioned about the range where it can link to your these fatalities and the health impact. And then so there is no difference between this, the second myth about rural urban.
No. So that is another myth that we
Hmm.
need to bust, that pollution remains confined within the municipal and administrative boundary of a city. No. Pollution blows with the wind and it's across all region. And a very big mistake that we have made overall nationally by originally by keeping urban and the rural conversations separate. And in that separation, in that silo, the biggest mistake was to keep the household pollution outside the ambit of air pollution control. We never made the link. Even when a lot of work has happened in India showing that how the exposure to chulha pollution kill women and children that Vivek just talked about. But we always thought that's a household problem and there's an outdoor problem without realizing, and now health ministry's own data is showing that that household is also contributing about 25 to 30% of the outdoor air pollution. So you cannot silo the problem. And therefore, the rural India today is really hugely impacted, not only because of use of solid fuel for cooking, heating, but also waste burning. And very interesting, over a period of time, we have also understood the multi-pollutant crisis. So we don't breathe one pollutant at a time,
Yeah.
right? It's a mixture of pollutant.
Hmm.
And now we've understood along with particulate matter, we are breathing nitrogen oxide, ozone, and something like ozone, a highly reactive gas. It gets created in the city where pollution happens, but it drifts to the rural areas and it kind of accumulates in rural areas.
So I have a question here. The another myth, because we are speaking from Delhi, we speak from this geographical perspective. It seems almost like it's a winter problem. But is it true, or it's
Not at all.
24/7, wherever you are in India, you are actually enduring this crisis and you are in a trap? Is it so?
Yes. So it's not a seasonal problem. It is not an episodic problem. It is a problem that is continuous throughout the year, throughout the day and night. Only thing is, sometimes the complexion and the composition of the pollutants will change depending on the season. During summer, you will have much higher impact of dust because you have wind-blown dust a lot. But in winter, the impact of combustion sources are going to go up much more. So clearly, therefore, we cannot say that there is this season, except maybe during monsoon heavy rains, when you might be breathing some cleaner air. But also keep in mind that during monsoon, when the particles are washed away, it is the toxic gases that begin to lead the air quality index, your nitrogen oxide, your ozone. So it's a really a trap for us. And that multi-pollutant crisis is also telling us what you just asked, that now we have realized that you cannot think about one city trying to battle the problem and winning it. It's the airshed, it is the larger region that you have to address. Now, if you ever think that, okay, let's push Delhi to do everything, and Delhi has done quite a bit actually compared to other cities. Delhi cannot become a green island when the entire Indo-Gangetic plain is trapped in pollution. So therefore, now the focus is shifting towards that how do you what you're asking for at the local, hyper local, and city level to happen, it should happen at the regional scale. And the biggest example, an illustrative example of that, is what happened during the hard lockdown days of pandemic, when you had shut down activities across the country and you said, well, I can celebrate blue sky now, without realizing that it happened because you took regional level action. So the cleanup that happened in the city happened because you shut down activities, industrial activity, travel, all the polluting activities. But you cannot do that to secure health. You need action to get to the meet the clean air benchmark. And I think the slow murder continues this phase. One one critical message that we are getting today, that small incremental steps do not help. Imagine back in late 90s, if Delhi could be so courageous despite all the challenges, okay, and so decisive about taking that one leapfrog action, They did not say, okay, I'm not going to do step by step. I'll do Bharat stage 1, and then 5 years later, Bharat stage 2, and another 5 years, Bharat stage 3. But I'm going to substitute the fuel in 3 years, right? And they took a decision to move entire public transport and local commercial transport to CNG when the country was not producing even a single CNG bus. But only because of the mandate, you enabled investments to happen in a new technology. But somehow we are not being able to rework that magic now when the electric vehicles are now available with zero tailpipe emissions. And now we are trying to be incremental. We say, okay, you can, the little bit of electric maybe along with many other technologies and fuels, but nobody is willing to put the weight behind an ambitious zero emission transition, which has to be the next generation
I have a
transition.
I have a question here. I
Yeah.
think because it's definitely very clear that it is a public health emergency now.
Absolutely.
The number of fatalities that people are quoting, it compares to the official figure of deaths due to COVID-19. Unfortunately, that's the time also we had our blue sky also.
Absolutely.
But I think COVID air pollution is killing much more than the COVID pandemic if you go by the official number and all these things. So a city is not able to clean its air, and the air cannot be, as you pointed out, be cleaned as an island approach to it, and it's a national problem. So do you think actually if you acknowledge it, you approach it as a public health crisis,
Yes.
then can things get done or move, or what you call the leapfrogging in that front?
So we certainly have to do that, because even that original leapfrog happened because we really put the public health on the agenda. And that recognition had to move out of what he said, the denial. Okay, that is very critical. We have to acknowledge that it is a public health emergency, and we need to take action the way we did during pandemic. That is the sense of urgency that needs to get built now. Now, but to be able to do that, and if we do that, then the what how will it help really? We know what the solutions are, but what we are not being able to do is to build scale and the speed of the solution. It's not that nothing is happening in the country. I mean, we have already documented all the emerging good practices, with respect to energy transition in transport, in industry, in households. At the same time, the mobility transition that is needed so that we can reduce our dependence on personal vehicles, upscale the integrated public transport system supported by walking and cycling, and then the circularity, that you do not treat waste as a waste, close that loop, and you recover material out of that waste and do not burn it. We know all of that. And a lot of good practices have emerged. There's an Indore case, there is a Delhi case. We know what to do. But where we are really slipping is we are just not being able to get the things done at a scale. A biggest irony today is that the first phase of action in Delhi, when we really targeted very strategically the toxic diesel in transport and very toxic use of coal, furnace oil, petcoke, etc. in industrial sector. And we went all out. And in Delhi, we have eliminated that almost. Today, we have data, government data to show that how diesel car sales have dropped from nearly 40% to just 5% today.
And
Right?
did it help in bringing down the
So
pollution level?
yes, if you really look at the long-term trend in
Mhm.
Delhi, you do see a bending of the pollution curve, because even imagine you have shut down 4 coal power plants in the city as well, right? Now there has been a bend in the pollution curve, but that's where we have to understand the future challenge. Even after bending the pollution curve where we are today, you require another 60% reduction to meet the clean air standards. What will you do?
That's in Delhi only.
Only Delhi. But then, as I said, Delhi cannot do this alone. And therefore, all this transition must happen together and at a huge speed and scale. Interesting is that Supreme Court finally in 2018 took recognition of the fact that you need a comprehensive approach. You need to act in all the key sectors of pollution and mandated the new clean air plan, comprehensive plan, right? But simultaneously, court had also said that you also need to take emergency action during winter. Unfortunately, what has happened is that the comprehensive plan somewhere has got sidelined, and the entire focus now is only on emergency and episodic action. So the moment winter is over, we are just forget.
Does it remind you? It sounds similar to when you started in 1996 when the pollution under control certificates were. It almost sounds similar in approach like
Cosmetic,
this,
very,
that kind of thing.
incapable of really, uh, you know, addressing the root cause, the structural part of the problem. And that's where we are making the mistake.
That's why you have also named this as the slow murder continues.
Exactly.
So this is the book both in English and Hindi, and it's almost reads like an what sorry to use this, but an obituary of India's air. And every page stops you to think and also angers you also in many way, and it's emerging at the end that it's the biggest public health emergency that we are now enduring.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have a very personal level. You don't have a solution like I can clean my water, I can also get a purifier, but it's not going to help.
This elitism has
Ah.
to stop.
And in 30 years that has actually passed by since you started, it shows that we have taken steps, but we are again faltering on the.
Taking steps. Things are happening. The kind of programs that are now getting designed for waste management, for energy transition, the challenges, and that's what people need to understand. The Western world, they have also cleaned up the air, but they had the luxury of spacing their action over a period of 40 to 50 years. Whereas you have to clean up your air in the next 5 years because public health does not give you that space and the margin to delay action. That's why we need public health as the propeller of the decision making. Otherwise, you can take all actions happening. Everyone is going to say, okay, we are doing such nice things. But the scale at which you need to mobilize resources, repurpose spending for efficient and effective solution, and the kind of scale that is needed. So, whatever you may have done in Delhi, first of all, do that across the Indo Gangetic Plain, and then do a lot more. Now, that's the preparedness that we have to work towards. But for that, we have to change the public understanding. Today, the biggest change is a lot more people are talking about air pollution than they were in 1998. That's great. Doctors are out there telling them all the time.
And
what to
more
do.
people are also dying.
Yes, that
We are also losing more
tragedy.
family members.
Exactly. But then, as I always say, that why you need to work to build the awareness around the problem. Today, it is a lot more important to build awareness regarding the solution so that you can really build public demand for solution to change the politics around this issue.
Thank you, Anumita. And as I said, this is the book, I think, and you can download it from Center for Science and Environment CSE website. And this gives you the sense, and it's our own story. And that's all about this. Over to
So
you,
that
Sukanya.
note, I think it's already almost time. I mean, we've crossed the time, but so Anumita, we can say that, I mean, there is science. I mean, you can see that science is stronger now. Evidences are clear, but still the fight for clean air is still not over. We are still struggling. I mean, people are still struggling to come to work. People are still struggling for on day-to-day basis because everybody is unwell. And the recent report that you have done in that also, I mean, we've been talking about how stubble burning is no longer the situation, right? It's the local sources that is causing in Delhi. So, keeping all this in mind, what is the way ahead for us as people?
Always people want to
Because,
know
yeah,
what can I do,
exactly. Because
right?
public, I mean, for public, I think it is louder. The public demand is louder because, as Richard pointed out,
Certainly.
people are dying. So,
Yes.
it becomes about, I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to contribute in some way.
So, there is certainly a lot of space for people to do something at their own level. Lot of individual choices add up for that collective action that can make an impact. So if I make those choices that I am going to reduce the pollution footprint of my lifestyle, right? Wherever I can walk, I will. Wherever I can cycle, I will. I'll try and take my public transport. I'll try and ensure that in my neighborhood, nobody is burning waste, that I am going to ensure if any construction in my neighborhood, I'm ensuring that there is a collective pressure on them to adopt the right control measures, the pollution control measures. So there's a lot that we can do and which will help. But at the same time, we also have to understand that you will also have to be enabled. It's all right to say, I'm not going to use my car, but if the government tells me, I am leaving it to you to organize your own mobility because I cannot spend adequately on the public transport, or I'm going to spend only on widening road and flyovers so that it is more convenient for you to drive the car, then you are by design influencing my choice in a wrong way. And that also has to stop. So that's why, while we certainly need to do a lot more, and like I will say, okay, why don't we segregate our waste? Why don't we recycle our waste so that it doesn't accumulate in the open for others to burn? But then I will segregate, but I also need my municipality to collect it in a segregated way as well, and then do the material recovery. So, somewhere the individual action, collective community action, and also the institutional and the government action, you need to build synergy around it. But we have seen, like in other cities, don't think that the air pollution problem is over even in the Western world. Today, London is going to one of the massive air pollution campaigns. And one of the biggest enabler in that has been access of the community to data evidence so that the public opinion can get much sharper. So we now need a lot more knowledge, data, and evidence in the public domain so that the community demand for action gets really strong. And that has to be the big propeller.
I think that's all for today. And you can download the report. You can you can just go to cseindia.org and the report is freely available for you to download. And that's all. CSE will continue working, reporting, researching, and putting out solutions as much as we can. And we hope you will continue the journey with us. And